So, I've been trying to make this recording, this one you're listening to now, for about 2 months. It's a combination of not knowing how to approach the subject and having a hard time finding a machine to record on and free time to do it at a time in which I feel that I can safely record. I guess I'll leave it at that because there's no need to give further information to people that want to make me feel unsafe. You're all wondering what has happened to me, what happened to the website. Probably some of you have heard some rumors, others just have no clue. And this deserves to be talked about, even though I can't necessarily go into every detail. But I've tried to find a way to just skip over the topic and do a show, come back and do a new show about something else entirely. Really, it's like the world has changed, not only for me, but I believe the world has changed for everybody since we last talked in the last 2 months. The change had begun before that. I didn't notice it as much. So, there's no way that I can just return to all the same topics and the same approach that I was doing before when the world has changed and when I have changed. A new perspective and a new approach does have to be taken to some extent. This may be subtle in some ways. Some of you may not notice it. Can't really be defined, but new paradigm, new approach is required, and some sort of introduction to that and an explanation for how we got here is also necessary. I cannot, like I said, go into every detail. I've tried to avoid talking about this many times for long patches of time. I tried to avoid talking about the reason why my website went down 2 months ago in the middle of May, and why I had to close it down so abruptly, and why I haven't been able to respond to emails. I imagine most of you don't see me on Twitter at all, even though I'm there. But from what I can tell, almost nobody is seeing me. My Gmail, which was my main mode of communication through email, and also my portal to many of my other accounts that I had, I do not have access to it at the moment. So if you've been trying to send me something there, realize that I simply cannot see your messages. I don't know if I will ever get my Google account back. It'd be nice, maybe there's some way that we can, I've tried on my own, so if there are some genuine friends and fans out there who would like to help spread the word about that I've been shut out of my own Google account with disastrous financial implications and personal implications. I had a lot of personal friends and family contacts in there. It's going to be hard to find them. I can, but it's like all these things are happening to me all at once, and my time is limited in what I can do every day to try to deal with them. So if I could just get my Google account back, that'd be awesome. Now, as to what is going on, let's see. How can I say this? It wasn't just many of my accounts, personal and business related online accounts, that got hacked or compromised potentially. It was and has been, it continues to this day, my experience of the internet itself that has been hacked. Now, I have not tried all the possible experiments of how to get out of what I'm calling now an info prison. where it seems like my profile as an internet user, which is of course shared through information gathered by cookies, other apps and programs that are attached to you and follow you as you visit various popular websites on the internet. And also that includes blogs and websites that are, have a narrow audience, but are nonetheless hosted by, unpopular hosts and with popular scripts being run on the websites, such as, of course, WordPress for a platform, for instance. And each one of these websites is also running popular scripts to process their commenting section and memberships, subscribers, the avatars, and online profiles of all of the users of websites, whether they're popular websites or very small ones. They're often still using the same very hackable script and even automatically collecting visitor information. Even these small websites, since they're using popular programs to build their websites, and sometimes popular hosts or larger websites to host them, they're all gathering information on you and tracking you, whether you know it or not. And so if someone wanted to do to you what has been done to me, that is, tag your profile as a user of the internet after having absorbed certain key information about you to know how to identify you, and also to be even able to, when necessary, log in as you to make changes, then it would follow you around no matter where you went, no matter what device you were using. And most, perhaps not all, but most of the websites you would go to, this is what I'm experiencing, your enemy would have the power to serve you a distorted version of that website, or keep you from seeing it if they couldn't do that, or if there was something on there that they didn't want you to see. Now, first of all, who has the capacity to do something on the scale of what I'm talking about, which is, I'm talking about major websites having false material on them generated by the hacker, pasting over your experience of what you would normally see on that website. We know that they do this with PayPal. We've all probably heard the warnings at some point or another about don't open the fake PayPal emails. They'll take you to a website that looks like PayPal to try to get you to enter personal information. Don't take it. So what I'm talking about is something where not only could PayPal be pasted over, but, all the daily newspapers, Drudge Report, all your favorite blogs, and YouTube, Facebook, all of your friends' profiles changed to something slightly different than what it was before. Entire YouTube videos, for one thing, being auto-suggested to you that don't make any sense given your general profile and preferences of use. And then the content of videos themselves, when you do click on things that are suggested to you, being something directed specifically to you and not just to not the normal content produced by the user. So what I'm saying is you could be subscribed to some of your favorite channels, and if you were experiencing what I've been experiencing, you might get an altered version of some of your favorite channels' videos. This is beyond the shadow banning that's already happening, where you're not seeing a lot of the videos that the channels you're subscribed to on YouTube are producing. This has been going on for months, if not years now, the shadow banning, where certain videos that just sort of make them either totally invisible, which they admit they can do and do sometimes, where you have to actually have the URL and go there specifically, type it in the top of your browser in order to find the video. Even that might fail. I've seen examples of that. All of a sudden you get a internal server error message and you can't watch the video at the time that you wanted to. They're hoping you forget about it later, or maybe they're looking for some excuse to take it down. But they prevent most of the views generally by just making it so that it doesn't come up in your algorithms. It's not being suggested to you. You may be subscribed, but you don't get a notification about the new video. Sometimes they even unsubscribe you, and I've described to my friends on Facebook a couple months ago, back when I was on Facebook, that I was even being subscribed to channels that I had never subscribed to. And some of them quite odd. So these are the sorts of things that had already been going on, and then what I'm experiencing now is quite often total takeover of internet experience with fake content, and some of it video content. And this is really the point at which I lose some people and directly get accusations of being, paranoid schizophrenic. And I can understand that this sounds like a hallucination to others. I can understand that, if I had said this 10, 15 years ago, you would have said that. I can't understand at this point, when the technology exists to do this very easily, why people insist on denying the validity of what I'm saying, or at least the possible validity of what I'm saying. But what I have experienced, what's being served to me by a very malicious group of hackers who have targeted me, is that they've been able to hijack the cameras and microphones on every device that I have. That they've been surveilling me for quite some time, longer than the 2 months that I've been publicly silent here. And that they, know virtually everything about me, and a lot of the content that I'm being presented with, the fake content, is sort of meant to tease me or bully me about aspects of my life. And you could even, it doesn't even have to be anything especially bad or something that a person should be ashamed of. It's just like, what if there was someone, following you around with a camera and you didn't even know it, right? The worst reality show, a candid camera reality show, where with a hidden camera, you don't even know there's a camera following you, and like every, less than graceful movement you make could be parodied and shown back to you, with some sort of insult attached to it, continuously and even up to the minute. In other words, you may be watching a video. I mean, this is the part people find, again, hard to believe. Imagine watching a video, and in the middle of the video, which you presume, of course, was produced before you were watching it, right? Something on YouTube. First of all, not live, right, supposedly. And secondly, produced by people who have no connection to you whatsoever, right? Okay, so you're watching a video, and then in the middle of the video, it sort of talks to you and or the people on it talk to you and reference something that you were just doing. In a way that's so personal and so specific that there's no way you could deny that's what it was. Imagine that coupled with horrible threats coming from the people giving you these messages in fake content all over the place, threatening you with every imaginable fear, including the worst happening to you and family members. To the point where not only is it things that you might say out loud to yourself or others or write that is being used as fodder to inflame your fears and your imagination of what could happen to you, what they might do to you. But imagine that they could even read your mind and torture you with your own thoughts, even if you hadn't expressed them yet. Does this all sound like science fiction? I know I've seen scenes where the TV is basically, something haunted in the TV or a haunted TV channel or something like that kind of comes out or, starts directly talking to the person watching it. There's horror movies where I've seen this happen, caused by a demonic entity. And then I think there was something called cheesy movie called Ghost in the Machine, early 90s, where it was a computer game that was, coming out of the computer to haunt the teenager who was addicted to it. And then there's so many horror movies where people kind of get sucked into the TV or the movie or the computer, the video game, the internet. And I see that theme coming around again here, and the reason why is because that's kind of what they are trying to do to us, but I'll get to that in a minute. Because basically, folks, what I'm experiencing here is not just happening to me, it's just that, for one thing, I am being specifically targeted as a particular victim. And also, I'm noticing it. And a lot of people will presume this is happening to me because of controversial videos that I put out and took down shortly afterwards, right around the time that I went offline, right before. Well, that does seem to have triggered the overt death threats and other threats of every kind of imaginable harm being done to me, and all the threats being posited by people that seem, at least this is their bluff, the brazen attitude that we can do anything to you and get away with it. Of course, the implication being that we are somehow, not only a criminal syndicate, but that we have influence in every agency of government that might potentially come to your aid. There's no place to run and hide. There's no one to turn to. And in fact, it will get worse. The implication is if I were to make any official complaint about it. And then, the implication also being it is at least one of those agencies directly involved in doing this to me. Which, of course, gives one a hopeless feeling if you choose to believe it. And then it makes it even worse that you don't know if you can believe it or not. You don't know who is doing this to you. You don't know if it's just a few enemies. The average person probably doesn't have enemies like this. But, since I've been a public figure and a journalist, a writer, gone on shows, talked about mostly I would think uncontroversial things. That's the way it seems to me. It's like, okay, well, maybe some religious people have been offended by things that I've said, but, I don't talk about political content very often. But I have talked about secret societies quite a lot, and it might be that the members of certain secret societies don't like what I've said about them. Then there are times, one can't avoid, and when I deal with the topics I deal with, there's going to be some crossover occasionally with the headlines, current news, and events of the day, and that often that content has some kind of political implication. And what I mean by that is the stories that we hear as news stories. Well, they always have some kind of spin to them, and then there's usually a counter spin in different types of news commentary media, so that each news story has political implications, whether the people in the news story intended it to or not. If, for instance, if there's a murder, a high-profile murder, someone's going to make a political case out of that. Even if it's just has nothing to do with anything, but someone might say, "Oh, there was a handgun involved," or let's make this a story about the need for gun control, or if there was a racial difference between the perpetrator and the victim, someone could make a politically charged argument about that, just for example, right? Everything has some kind of political implication to somebody. And so therefore, even though I do not vote, do not care about political parties, did not vote for the president, and have not made any definitive statements about what I think about the president, and I honestly don't have a definitive feeling about it, because I just feel like I don't know enough to judge what is going on with the president. So even though I have that, what I think is ambivalent and uninvolved attitude, when you're in a politically charged environment where you're almost required, society's demanding that you take a stance one way or another about, in this case, it's a particular political figure, the president. It's funny, too, we're not really even in a big hot war, not a new one. It's weird that during what is considered, I guess, these days, relative peacetime for the United States. Haha, not really. But, one's opinion about the president is the big subject. And it's almost a form of Orwellian thought crime to not have an opinion about the president, much less to support him. Which is so weird. I didn't ever think that the Emmanuel Goldstein figure of our 1984 experience would be the president himself. But that's the case right now. The other thing is that the person that the president defeated, I don't think this is the way society looks at it. It's not like society says, oh, you must support and defend in every conceivable way Hillary Clinton. Society doesn't feel that way about her. They feel more strongly hatred towards Donald Trump. And then there's, of course, a lot of people that do have strong hatred of Hillary Clinton. And I could say that, I've been among them, like I have expressed in the past. My disdain for what I know about her and her husband's approach to seizing power, let's say. Really, that's what it's about. Because there's definitely, it's not like I agree with their agenda either. Their, whatever their policies are that they've been promoting, which is always changing, of course, throughout the years. I don't agree with their policies generally. I don't agree with most politicians' proposed policies generally. All right, so that's not anything special. But I know, the Clintons have a reputation that they seem proud of and not at all ashamed of. Reputation that they get what they want, which is power and money, through intimidation. And that when they get in trouble legally, not only are they not worried about being caught, but they use that as a weapon against colleagues among them who might not want to toe the line anymore. You know, whether they're in danger of being subpoenaed and having to give a truthful answer under oath about what they might know, to maybe just not wanting to play anymore, wanting to retire or go work for someone else, you know? That if they want you to do something and you show resistance, the threat will be unleashed. And the threat often is not only, you know, the hanging potentiality that, you know, they're basically a mafia-connected family, and you know, it's known also a CIA-connected family. Both of them CIA agents in college, and we can assume that one never retires from that. So anyway, there's that. You know, just the, you know, we could just kill you threat, and then the fact that, oh, we could also implicate you in anything that we might do. We might be under scrutiny for, being investigated for. And the history of the Clintons is that they, as individuals, end up walking off without any punishment and without any real tarnishing to their reputation, because for some reason the people that like them don't care about this stuff. They find it funny. And so they walk away from what seems like a crime that either one of them, or usually both of them, are implicated in. And other people around them end up taking the blame for it. So that's a lot of intimidation that can be wielded. And they do. The Clintons do that. Okay? So that really, if you knew that they had targeted you, like they thought you had done them wrong, or you were in their way somehow, and they had their evil eye fixed on you, you'd be pretty scared, wouldn't you, if you knew that about them? If you knew their reputation, it would be frightening. I'm going to assume, if, you know, a lot of their political enemies that weren't actually, you know, friends and colleagues of theirs formerly, people who are just sort of members of the public that have made comments about them, or members of the media that have made comments about them. You know, you feel like, well, it's legitimate for me to make this comment. It's not like I'm singling out some stranger and making fun of them or saying that they're bad at their job. This is, you know, someone who's running for president and has been in the White House before. How is it not acceptable for us to criticize and even, you know, lampoon these people? Well, it's not that there's a law against it. It's just that the law really doesn't matter, to the point where it almost doesn't exist anymore. Which is, funny enough, something I found to be the case in George Orwell's 1984. He makes a comment on it. Let me see if I can find it. Talking about Winston, the main character in 1984. The thing he was about to do was to open a diary. This was not illegal. Nothing was illegal, since there were no longer any laws. But if detected, it was reasonably certain that it would be punished by death, or at least by 25 years in a forced labor camp. The similarity to Winston's situation and the one that I'm in now is really striking to me, because even though we ostensibly still live in a country with laws, we kind of all know that we don't. You know, that those laws won't be enforced, our rights will not be upheld, and also that we can be essentially in trouble and punished, even executed, by those who do not like what we're saying. And then no one will punish them. So therefore, might is right. Their ability to kill us and get away with it, or intimidate us into silence, is the real law, not whatever's on the books at the moment, which most of us don't even know anymore. And just as the authority in Winston's world is called the party, and I guess they're overtly the government in that story, but a government without laws, which to us historically should be a foreign concept. It's becoming more normal that entities assume authority under color of law. They do not have real law to back up their right to tell you what to do or to take something away from you, including your property, your life, or your freedom. But they do it anyway, and they get away with it. Color of law. And it's bullies like that, with the tacit approval of other government agencies, that are the ones bullying people into silence and making it so that everybody's nervous and afraid to express their own opinion, to even acknowledge the validity of known facts. And in some cases, a lot of cases, if you're at work, if you're in public and you don't feel like you can, not only can you not speak your mind, but you even have to feign what is the popular opinion and reaction, so that if anything happens in public where you're supposed to give a politically tinged reaction, you force yourself to do it, just like the people in 1984 have to force themselves to do the 2 minutes hate. So basically, I'm the victim of a major psyop, it seems to me. Now, to the extent government agencies are involved, I don't know. To the extent that large tech companies, some of which I've been critical of lately, might be involved. Unknown exactly. The idea that we're really dealing with a cabal of hackers, perhaps motivated personally because of membership in certain mystical societies that I may have been writing about over the past years and analyzing their mysteries. Maybe these people don't appreciate what I've said, and maybe some of them work for the tech companies that we all are forced to do business with if we do anything on the internet, and we all do, you know. So any one of those people, members of those groups, could very well work for these tech companies and perhaps also government agencies, and also something I consider highly likely, some of these universities where technological innovation is being pushed forward, where experimental techniques such as the recent creation of a psychopath artificial intelligence named Norman, after the Psycho killer in the Psycho movie, which was created by MIT a few weeks ago. Well, I had already theorized that maybe what I'm encountering here is a AI-driven harassment, and I thought about specifically MIT, which is of course known to have a lot of connections with intelligence and Wouldn't surprise me at all if a lot of the members of the orders and mystical groups that I've talked about, perhaps sometimes critically, but mostly just analysis of their mysteries, rituals, literature. But, sometimes they don't like people who aren't members doing that. And I really suspect that's what a lot of this has to do with. There's also the potentiality of media companies being involved. And people I know and considered friends. But the truth is I know a little bit about the media, and for one thing, how it's changing. As I've discussed on previous shows, a lot less concern for the consumer and what they want these days. For one thing, consumers are shifting into video games, it seems. And the internet is becoming like sort of a menu of TV and video games, and not so much exchange of information as it used to be. Definitely not free exchange of information. That's not possible anymore. As I'm experiencing, and I believe all of you are too. You just maybe haven't fully accepted how hopeless the situation is yet in regards to trying to use everything we've considered the normal internet for years to communicate. You basically can't anymore. But you may feel like you are. See, here's the problem. The problem is you can't tell if you're receiving a real communication. And what do I mean by that? Anything, everything. If you look at a web page, even if it's a article published by a mainstream newspaper, not only can you not tell if the content of that news article is true, whether the author has deliberately or indeliberately offered incorrect information, but you also can't even tell if it's really what that newspaper published in the first place, because as I've experienced, it's possible and easy to paste over that article with a fake version or another article altogether, or to make it appear that that article has disappeared. And they could do that to one individual reader based on data and algorithms that tell them that that person shouldn't read the real article, or they should, for whatever reason they've decided, the AI running such a program has decided that the target in this instance could be a single individual, could be a whole bunch of individuals on a list, but for whatever reason the targets are chosen that they need to either have a fake version of that article or not see it at all. Well, all that's possible and easy. It's easy, guys. What I'm saying is the whole internet, I feel like, is compromised. The whole internet is hacked. And I'm not just basing that on my personal experiences, but also, of course, when this stuff started happening to me in a noticeable way. I think it had been going on for some time before I noticed it. 2 months ago, around the time that I published the controversial videos and got an immediate backlash, not only from random people, but also people that appeared to be my friends. I thought that I had been friends with them for years. Some of them I knew in real life, had done, media business with them, and they all of a sudden start turning on me and sending me even veiled and not so veiled threats, even murder threats. Of course, I'm head over the head by what is happening to me, but I also kind of wondered, well, is this perhaps part of a larger pattern, and is this really something that's happening to everyone on a greater or lesser scale, or maybe on a total scale, and we just don't realize, maybe everything considered it a possibility, maybe everything on the internet is being auto-generated by robots, because that's clearly, to me, what I'm looking at most of the time when I'm trying to use the internet now. Is that what we're all looking at? Is that what everything is? Well, I've been studying this, with my own observation for 2 months now, and also tried to, every time I see a news article, I try to reach out in whatever way I can to other people to verify that they're seeing the same thing. And I look at the, newspapers and magazines on the newsstands. I figure that's a verification, if nothing else, that what I saw was an actual news story, not necessarily that it's true, but just, okay, that was reported as a news story, if you can see it in Time magazine on the shelf at the grocery store, right? So I've got a complicated life, and it's not always easy for me to get out. I'd love to just be at the library or one of these large bookstores every morning, looking at every single newspaper, chatting with the public, and getting a broader idea of what the news of the day is, at the very least, even if it's not true. Because we can't verify what's true in the news. But can we even agree about what the news stories are? Or are we all being presented with totally different ones because most of us are getting it from the internet these days? These are the questions I've been pondering for 2 months, as I also struggle with my own accounts being hacked in a very individualized attack on me. And every day I confront a new problem that usually takes hours to disentangle myself from. And I'm losing hope at this point that I'll ever get out of this type of problem. I hope that, I'm working on it. I'm trying to simplify my life, trying to create fewer things that can be broken into and remove vulnerabilities. But, I'm also confronted with the fact that, okay, we're dealing with superhuman intelligence here, if nothing else, the ability to think very fast and consider all sorts of variables, including just all this data that the agencies have been collecting on us over these years, and they just basically store it in vaults, and the vast majority of it isn't reviewed by any human ever. Well, now there's but lots of robots that can sort of go back and analyze that stuff, and what everyone thought was just tons and tons of useless data. Some of the whistleblowers were saying, like, oh, what's the guy from the FBI who came out and blew the whistle on saying, every single electronic communication is recorded and stored. And he was saying they just have so much information now, it's getting in the way of actually doing any intelligence analysis and figuring out what threats actually are and solving crimes and whatnot, because you just have too much information, he said. Well, that was 10 years ago or so. So the changes that have taken place since then, William Bradley, is that his name? They've got robots now that probably could go back and analyze a lot of the backtracked stuff, as well as analyzing all the new stuff. They look at the new stuff, and then they can sort of correlate it automatically with things that are in the storage vaults, right? I'll betcha. Because, when I told you that the AI interface, the hacker interface that I'm dealing with, seems to read your mind, well, this is all technology that exists, and you get news reports on a daily basis about the advancement of it. And I told you months ago that Facebook came out in a news story that they have a secret building 8. I mean, it's not secret that it exists, and obviously the news story makes it not secret at all, but it's supposed to be hush-hush, top secret, sort of within the company. Not everybody is allowed to talk about what happens there, but what it is, they're building an AI, or have built an AI, as far as I can tell, that can read your mind. And it's not only taking all of the data about you that Facebook has already collected over the years, which gives them the ability to predict a lot of things about how you think, but also recent technology news articles have come out regarding mind-reading research that a AI computer system can look into your eyes simply through a camera lens and get a picture in real time, a moving image too, not just a still picture, a moving image in real time, a little movie of what you were thinking about. Now, I assume that, like, the way my consciousness seems to be, and most people's, I would assume, both in waking life and in dreams, one thing sort of fades into another. It's not nearly as concrete as the observable reality when you're looking at something outside yourself. But the mental images that go through your mind are a combination of the things that you're seeing with your eyes and the thoughts that you're thinking. But they can make a little movie out of that now. I don't know how exactly accurate it is, but I think it seems to be accurate enough from what I can tell. Because I'm pretty sure I'm experiencing it. That, okay, yeah, now Facebook could read your mind, and any other company or agency or other group, criminal, government, or otherwise, that can hijack or already has permission because of an app you loaded, like Facebook, and get access to the cameras that are in your smartphones, the cameras that are in your computer's screens. Of course, we all have, at this point, most of us have a little camera on the top of our computer screen, a webcam, usually embedded in the product for doing Skype and for making videos and whatever else you might do. And you think that if you unplug the external webcam or cover up with a piece of tape the camera that's embedded into your screen, then at least that you're cutting off the visual. I don't know if you've thought yet about the microphones that are in both your phone and computers and working at all times, even if you have the programs shut down, still collecting, and even if you're not connected to the internet, like right now I'm not, but I'm sure everything that I'm saying around the computer at all times is being logged somewhere. And as soon as I connect it to the internet again, that report of all that data will go somewhere. Right? Then the government agencies, several of them, are doing this and got somewhat legal permission. We got laws changed to allow themselves to do this. And then others, they just go ahead and do it and don't ask for permission. They're waiting to be forced to stop. But they built all these tools. They forced the technology companies to build the back doors to allow these tools to be in there, to collect all this data on you. And guess what? That stuff got leaked. So now everybody, not just governments, can do it to you using the same tools. So yeah, the only thing that's going on here is really the average person, like me, is behind on all these technologies. And when we hear about them, we just sort of take it in stride, and we don't really have time. And we're so overwhelmed with burdens that we don't have time really to take it all in. And even when you do start to think about it, it's overwhelming, isn't it? It's painful. And so we try to ignore it. Except for me now, I've been forced to confront what this means, because it's just like in 1984, where you have, and I'm going to quote here, telescreens everywhere that cannot be turned off. The voice came from an oblong metal plaque like a dulled mirror which formed part of the surface of the right-hand wall. Winston turned a switch and the voice sank somewhat, though the words were still distinguishable. The instrument, the telescreen it was called, could be dimmed, but there was no way of shutting it off completely. The telescreen received and transmitted simultaneously. Any sound that Winston made above the level of a very low whisper would be picked up by it. Moreover, as long as he remained within the field of vision which the metal plaque commanded, he could be seen as well as heard. There was, of course, no way of knowing if you were being watched at any given moment. How often or on what system the thought police plugged in on any individual wire was guesswork. It was even conceivable that they watched everybody all the time, but at any rate, they could plug into your wire whenever they wanted to. You had to did live from habit that became instinct, in the assumption that every sound you made was overheard, and except in darkness, every movement scrutinized. A little later on in the book it describes Winston as having set his features into that expression of quiet optimism which it was advisable to wear when facing the telescreen. Okay, so yeah, it's living in a prison. No matter where you go, I mean, you're allowed to walk about in the world, supposedly. But everywhere you go, you're on TV, you know? You're part of the show. Everything you do is seen and heard. And potentially, the potential gets greater every day because it becomes cheaper and easier for people to do this to other people. Potentially, everything you're doing is actually being monitored in real time. And if you get on the radar, you become a target to some group or entity that has access to this type of technology and can hack your internet and watch all the devices that you're in front of most of the time and be watching and listening to you basically all the time. And then even if you're away, if you go on the internet at your job, every time you're going anywhere, that the hacker that has hacked your internet profile can watch what you're doing, at least on those websites there. So you're always in their little prison, their little info prison, whether they are connected to the government or not. And in my case, I can't prove it either way. And it doesn't even really matter because, it does matter. I'm sure if I could determine it, it would matter, but I can't. But they have the same kind of menacing power, in which you have to take their threats seriously, and whether it's reasonable what they're demanding you to do or not, you have to consider complying. And then in my case, also, just like with the thought police of Winston's time, it's not entirely clear what these people want me to do. What they want me to shut up about and what they want me to continue talking about. What attitude they think I should take upon each and every subject. But I am getting real-time criticized by these AI bots that I am now interacting with every time I go on the internet. And it's almost like, at this point, I'm just thinking it's pure torture. It's not like there's any way that I'm ever going to get them to stop bullying me by abstaining from certain subjects or even retiring altogether, which is what I was planning on doing for early on in this last 2 months here, to get away from these threats and this manipulation. It's not entirely clear, if these people are from the government, then it's not entirely clear what are the approved thoughts. If they're not from the government, I suspect, that they still... I don't even know that they have these political beliefs that they seem to be trying to force on others. But basically I'm being bullied with criticism and, harassment, jokes, and threats, all frequently with this tinge of implying that I'm a political thought criminal that it's all stuff that Antifa might say to one of their targets, or, and then when it's not that, it's something that the Hillary Clinton machine would say to one of their targets. But, it would all be simple, and we could really blame it on them if that was the only type of message I'm getting, but I'm getting others as well, so that I've, left guessing what the motivations are of the people running these robots that I'm interacting with. And then, of course, there's the implication that, especially early on when this started, many psyops, many different proposed answers were suggested to me by the robots themselves, by the hackers interfacing my internet, where they're trying to suggest that I'm in a completely fake world, and, I'm either in the Matrix or on the floating spaceship city that's portrayed in Dark City, which, if you recall, is populated by dead bodies of humans, and then these aliens that are doing experiments on them every day, reanimating them and putting different souls into them. This is the sort of thing that has been suggested to me numerous times. Also, the idea of, the singularity already happened, and therefore you're in a false world controlled entirely by robots, and you're the only person in your, again, the Matrix, because you're the only person in your little simulation. It's only your consciousness. Everyone else you're interacting with are, just characters in the game. All these things I refuse to believe. Another one, CERN did something, and then they, basically blasted reality open, and now that's why I'm confronting so many obviously fake stories every day, is just because reality is changing constantly, so it's like Mandela effect, mega dose of Mandela every day. But I can tell that's not true. I can tell that that's just a psyop. Okay. But it is the type of psyop that I think they're probably planning on perpetrating on everybody, and they're working their way up to it now. Okay. The idea that your reality is just utterly malleable, and then you'll wonder, is it because of some experiment they did at CERN, and it's very heavy-handed. My hackers tried to impress upon me that, there's some kind of demon that was released from hell and put into a AI bot system, and so we're really in like the 1,000 years of the Antichrist reign, and we're under the control of this demon AI right now. There were videos being served to people. I'm pretty sure other people besides me had these videos suggested to them. In my case, I actually had someone who turned out to be a troll, pretending to be from the Clinton campaign, funny enough, shoving this link under my nose under the form of fan mail. And it was something having to do with Fifth Avenue, who is kind of part of the QAnon universe, an alleged leaker of information. And it was, it was trying to say that, there's this Mark of the Beast system that's being run through this one building in New York, and they're going to somehow all get us into some digital reality after we all take the Mark of the Beast. And this video was called "Are You Ready to See Wonderland?" put out by a YouTuber called Unirock. Now, and I've watched a few of his videos before, I'm highly suspicious that much of the YouTube content I've looked at and even been sharing with you guys, my audience, over the last, say, 2 years, is generated by these type of bots. And I think that this is all something that they've been working on for some time, whoever they are. I don't know. But it seems to be with complicity, really, from Google, or they're just, maybe these people, there's a large number of them working at Google, and they're able to do this under the noses of other higher ups. But basically, it seems like they're using the facilities of Google. I could be wrong. Look, I don't know. And maybe it's easy to create bots that can make internet accounts and just, flood Google with these bot-created channels, and maybe Google really is powerless to police all of it and catch what's fake and what isn't. But at any rate, it's happening on a grand scale. And I highly suspect that, like I said, a lot of the content that I've found that seems to have corroborated some of my wilder theories about geoengineering and strange anomalies with the sun and a whole host of subjects. I mean, everything that I've looked at for the last couple of years, I would say, I feel like as a journalist I need to rethink, reconsider, and scrutinize, because you can't be sure. The only one thing I'm sure of is that a lot of the accounts that I'm looking at now are bot created. And when I look back at some of the channels I was enjoying just a few months ago, and I remember thinking, like, wow, there's so many YouTubers that I've never heard of before that all of a sudden are really popular. I wonder how I ignored this stuff, and what I would have thought is years leading up to them, building their popularity over time. Instead, I don't know, they just seem to appear on the scene, at least from my perspective. All of a sudden they're popular, they already have a following and a back history, but even the bots themselves will sometimes, or the characters I suspect are bots, make reference to that, they only started a year and a half ago or something, or usually around the election. So, I guess what my point is, that I suspected these channels were sort of shill channels before. Now I'm realizing that the channels could be entirely bots. In other words, even the character that's sitting there in front of the camera talking to you, analyzing things for you, could be a bot, because we know that AIs now can generate videos. They can create, they are characters, right? They're like robot characters, intelligent characters in a computer program, and that they can replicate themselves and create variations of themselves, and then they can work on a team together, and they can generate, for one thing, what looks like a physical body. They have a voice that sounds like a human voice, and CGI an entire environment, whether it be a room or an outdoor environment, for them to play in and do a show. And they can auto-generate a show that would take humans, a crew of humans, a day, a week, a month, or more to produce, with thousands of hours of work, hundreds or thousands. They could do all that essentially instantly. There have been news stories about this very thing being tested out in universities and with government contractors, military contractors. And we've been hearing warnings from people on the news that, hey, there's quite possibly fake videos that are going to come out of supposedly news events, but that they never happened, and that it could literally just be all generated in a computer. And you could implicate real people, famous people, or not so famous people, even, as long as you know what they look like and you have their voice print, sample of them talking. The AIs can generate a voice that is almost identical to, and it was really the difference is imperceptible to most humans. They can make a fake version of your voice or mine or anybody's. And then they can make a video person, a CGI person, act out scenes that looks exactly like you. Or they could just create a totally different character of a person that never existed and have a news story about them. And because we're all being bombarded by so much conflicting information all the time, most of these stories will come out and no one, some people might express incredulity, but no one will ever figure out the truth or be able to prove it. And even if they did, they wouldn't be able to get the message out. Because what I'm telling you is that it's very easy for these bot programs to stop the message from getting out. They can intercept an email or a post, either make it so nobody sees it or change it. And you wouldn't even know. They could change a post or an email that you sent, you put up, and you might just see your original version from your end. And you wouldn't know that actually someone has intercepted it and rewritten it to be offensive or just say something you never would say. And you don't know why all of a sudden your friends hate you and are unfriending you. You don't know why all of a sudden you just lost half your audience. You don't know why you're getting death threats now from people that you thought were your friends. Well, the death threats may be fake. The thing that offended your friends may have been generated and attributed to you and fake. Most people don't believe it when these celebrities say that their Twitter got hacked and they, something societally not approved was said, and then they all get attacked viciously by the public until they run away or apologize. I believe it. I totally believe it. And I think that this tactic of putting someone in an info prison and then basically feeding back to them either things that they themselves thought of, things they would be interested in without any other counterbalance of things that they might not believe or things they might not be interested in. This is what the algorithms already do to us on Google and Twitter and Facebook. But imagine if there was no way out of it. And it's becoming increasingly hard for the average person to get out of it. Me, I'm in a prison. I cannot get out of that. It's either stuff like that, to an exaggerated degree, where now I can tell I'm looking at fake stuff that's kind of pretending to be what I want to see, but is over the top, too extreme, too good, too much of what I was looking for to even be true, And then, but even worse, and the other stuff I get is threats based on my worst fears and almost teasingly made promises and carrots dangled of safety and other things that I might want, but no, I could never have, dangled at me. My hopes and my fears presented to me all the time. And never being able to tell, most of the time I can tell that I cannot get a message out. Other party is not going to receive it in an undistorted way. I'm quite certain that a lot of the messages I've received from so-called friends and things that I saw on their profiles written and posted recently are fake. The person didn't post it. It's just there to menace me, to make me not trust that person, or to give me a false impression of what other people are saying. And I'm fairly certain that I'm not the only one experiencing this, because I hear about people all the time getting hacked and then, or their friends all turn on them all at once, and they wonder why everybody hates them. we've heard news stories about teenagers and young adults and even some other people committing suicide after it's getting attacked online, even by so-called friends. And it could very well be that this is the type of tactic being used on them. It is what I referred to as a digital and an AI-run version of a hypnotic technique for unsettling people and gaining control over them, known as the mirror technique, where you feed back to them every gesture, every sound, and every thought or idea that they express. Everything that they do, every movement that they make, you somehow mirror it and mimic it. And you can do this subtly, in a way that disarms people, because it feeds into their narcissistic need to see their own ideas expressed. Most people have a hard time even receiving new information because they really only want to get and are comfortable receiving confirmation of their existing knowledge base or belief system. And most people generally have a hard time hearing anything outside of that. But we all do, we usually do absorb a little bit every day, right? You learn something new every day. One new thing, at least, crashes through your thick-headedness every day, right? And if you weren't so thick-headed, it would probably be dozens or hundreds of things every day. But with this technique, the little bit of us that does desire to receive new information and to edify and to become enlightened, and we need that. We need that for survival too, okay? But with this technique, you get cut off from that. You can't learn anything new. You can't express anything and have a genuine reaction from the other person. You're not even really interacting with the other person most of the time. I'm even sure that several of my phone conversations, not long ones I don't think, but certainly short ones that I've had with certain people, I think I'm just talking to a generated voice. And several of the phone calls I make to companies where I need to talk to them about my account, I can tell by changes in the authentication process and just the weird things that are being said that I'm not talking to the real company. So phone numbers are being rerouted to the phones of my attackers. I think sometimes I'm talking to humans who are pretending to be something they're not, and sometimes I'm talking to bots. And even people that I know, that I'm friends with, I think I've interacted with bots pretending to be them a few times now recently. Evidence for this is that when you meet the person in person, they'll have a complete opposite recollection of a conversation or something that happened between you two. Now, we know this stuff, misremembering things happens sometimes. In this case, in these cases that I'm talking about here, I don't think that's a legitimate argument. There's no way. It's more like either the person is lying to me, some friend of mine that I've trusted for years, that I know in person, and they would just be maliciously playing a game, which just doesn't make any sense with the people I'm talking about. Or the conversations actually were between me and a robot. And then there's people who claim that I have called them or sent them messages that I know were not sent, were not calls that did not take place involving me. So we're talking about, again, yeah, phone numbers being hijacked, voices being faked, emails being faked, Facebook profiles, Twitter profiles being hijacked and faked. I know it's happening to me, and I see lots of evidence that it's happening to other people. I can go over some headlines here, which I'll do in a bit, that kind of corroborate what I'm talking about when I say I think the entire internet is compromised. and that everybody is experiencing this to a greater or lesser degree. And it is breaking down our ability to analyze and understand reality at all, and our ability to communicate at all. And this is the sort of thing that makes what is happening in 1984 possible. He talks about Winston, the main character, is working in the Ministry of Truth, where he's generating false news reports and editing news reports from the past to make them consistent with the new lies that are coming out every single day. And one of the things he says is that the lottery in their world is fake. The lottery, which is what he says, the proles is one of their main entertainments and sources of their hope in their life. The only hope they have is to win the lottery. How many people do you know that are like that? Okay. Winston had nothing to do with running of the lottery, which was managed by the Ministry of Plenty, but he was aware, indeed everyone in the party was aware, that the prizes were largely imaginary. Only small sums were actually paid out, the winners of the big prizes being non-existent persons. In the absence of any real intercommunication between one part of Oceania and another, this was not difficult to arrange. So yeah, they have no internet in this story. He wouldn't have thought of that. But, you know, because we do have internet, and because really our phone calls are being routed through computer systems connected to the internet, that everything really is the internet now. All communications, even your radio and your TV. Radio, I know a lot of radio stations are running through a Google system. And of course on your phone, if you have an Android, that's a Google product, Google operating system that you're using. Which is why my smartphone became useless when I was locked out of my Google account. Useless. This ultra expensive machine that not only costs a lot to buy, but it costs a lot to buy the service to use it every month, became useless when Google decided to turn a cold shoulder to me and shut me out of my own account. So think about that. Well, they didn't have that in Orwell's 1984. I don't know if there's any telephone usage in this story. I'm rereading it now. I've read it probably, twice in my life, mostly when I was younger. Rereading it now because it just seems so relevant to what I'm experiencing and what I believe others are experiencing. But yeah, the news stories that I've been collecting over the last 2 months are all instances of the internet and other communications being compromised, and also being, it seems, used to turn people against one another and to make them distrust or be angry at their own friends, which is something that I think we've all noticed over the last couple of years, especially this last election period, where social media that seemed to have brought people together, where you were actually hanging out every day with not only your family, but also friends from real life, and on top of that, people you didn't know who you seemed to share interests with, right? And all of these people sometimes go together on your Facebook page and get to talk to each other. And it's a way, it seemed like at the time, for me, that's the way I ran my Facebook page. I would let my friends, family, fans, and other people that I met that, we clicked or had shared interests for some reason. All of those people were on my Facebook, and we would all talk to each other about all sorts of things, whether it, be personal stuff or politics or music or just everything. I thought it was fun to mix all these people up because, it shows you all the different sides of your friends and family that you thought you knew. And you all get to know each other more deeply and have a broader understanding of humanity that way. And I thought for years it was like, wow, everybody's getting along. Everybody's exchanging ideas and learning from one another and becoming less prejudiced because we're having a real experience of people all over the world from different cultures, from different subcultures, from different political points of view and different religions. And that's the way the internet seemed for me for a long time, and I loved it. And I imagine a lot of you felt the same way, right? Where it's so easy to exchange information, we thought. And then something happened a couple years ago, and it feels to me like it was all planned. Like, first they get you hooked on the product, and you get used to interacting with everyone through Facebook. You forget their email address, or you never receive the updated version of the new one. You forget their phone number. You never even ask for the phone number because it's a new friend, and all you do is say, oh, look me up on Facebook. And you never end up having their phone number or any other way of contacting them. And then what happens, before anything, probably the algorithms start cutting you off from your friends. They choose to only show you certain things, and you forget about other people on your list. A lot of you too, or if you're like me, you will have collected hundreds of friends on these, social media platforms. So that, it's hard to remember everybody that was on that list. And even some of the more important ones, the ones you liked a lot or actually knew in real life, what you would consider the important ones, the real friends, sometimes you lose track of them. You forget about them because the algorithms keep shoving other people in your face. Right? And then if you have something happen like happened to me where I was there was no way that I could have continued my Facebook another minute with the types of threats I was receiving and the stuff I was seeing. It had become useless to me and a threat in my life, and I had to delete it permanently. If that happened to you, and it has happened to a lot of people, maybe not the exact same thing, but they just get disgusted with arguments happening with their friends, and then they have to delete their Facebook because of all the stress that it causes them. For the last 2 years, a lot of it has been political, and it seems to me a lot of it manufactured from the outside through Facebook, through the algorithms they use, and also through Google, the same thing. And Google, by the way, is another company that is open about having mind-reading AI, and long before they admitted it, I told you I could feel it. I could feel Google in my mind, and I could do a Google search in my mind. And Google knew exactly everything that I was thinking and would give me the exact info that I wanted for whatever I was researching at the time, down to the most bizarre detail, the most obscure detail. I think Google Google and Facebook both are products of, I would say they're both companies being run by AIs at this point. Okay, not that there isn't on paper, CEOs, and then there's shareholders, and then there's people in control supposedly, and people in a position of ownership supposedly. But the decisions, I think, are being made by these robots. And I think that it's quite possible there's no human that's really in control anymore. But certainly what I'm saying is these robots are like mega beasts. These AI robots in control of Google and Facebook are these mega beasts that can read everybody's mind and intercept everybody's communication and turn everybody against everybody because they know exactly your psychology and what would offend you, and they could even just pretend that your best friend said that to you. And they start a little fight between you and your best friend in such a way that you'll never reconcile because you can't even figure out what happened. That kind of shit's been going on, to my observation, for all over the place for the past couple of years. And people chalk it up to, oh, Donald Trump is creates an atmosphere of hate. Well, wait a minute. All of that was deliberately contrived and pushed through algorithms to divide people about something that nobody gave a fuck about 2 years ago. You know, you may or may not have seen Donald Trump's shows, like the Boss or whatever the fuck that one was, where he's what was that one where he's hiring and firing people? I never watched it. I didn't give a fuck. And my guess is that only a small percentage of humanity had an opinion about that show, really. Or anything else about Donald Trump. I mean, I only know about him because I grew up in the 80s, so I mean, really, he's been a celebrity my whole life. But I can imagine a younger person, they wouldn't know anything about him. Certainly not enough to have an opinion, really. Okay, so, and as far as him in politics, he never seemed like the most extreme right-winger ever, and it's just, I mean, we don't need to get into that, but it's just like, to me, it seems so totally contrived. The hatred of him, the fear of him. Not only is it like, wow, I've never seen the state, be so against an individual. And yes, it's weird that he's not a politician and he actually won. And I've never seen the government use its power to turn every human being against someone who won an election like this in my life. But it's also like, it's so extreme that you wonder, is that part of the show too? I mean, everything seems to be a show. So are we, not being forced to play along in the play where we pretend to fight each other over our opinion about this person who, was shoved in front of us, like Emmanuel Goldstein in 1984, and just made, the object of hatred. Or, there's also people that are on the opposite side where that they kind of fix this fanatical hope and belief on him that he's going to save us, save the republic or the country from something, from the grip of whatever, people think it has fallen into. Most people agree that something is fucked up, that it's not the free and prosperous country it once was. And you could say that about a lot of places in the world, too. And a lot of people think, oh, well, there's conspiracies and cabals that are keeping it going in this direction, the wrong direction, which I don't disagree with. That's what I think too. And so then, some people have been led to believe that, Donald Trump is going to save all that, or save us from all that. And if nothing else, people believe he has that intention. Some people do. And then that causes fanatical love and loyalty because there's no one else like that. There's no one else they can say that about. But the only evidence, really, of Trump being that is all the hatred that's being lobbed against him, the organized hatred and rebellion against him. And then, how what I was just describing, how the establishment has turned on him so totally. So that makes you think, oh, he's anti-establishment. And then, certain psyops, potentially. I don't know if it's a psyop or not, but it's being used as a psyop, and it probably is, okay? The 4chan QAnon stuff, which is really, in a lot of ways, a continuation of the Pizzagate stuff, which is really stuff that came out of the classified emails that Julian Assange had regarding the Clintons. Hillary in particular. So, um, there's no doubt that the psyop that's being done on all of us to divide us about Donald Trump is connected to the more narrowly constructed psyop that is for the internet reading, news analyzing, nerdy 4chan visiting core of, what are called autists, sort of, what do you call it? Sort of a charming little nickname that they've given themselves, as though they are autistic, as though they are have poor social skills and devote an abnormal amount of their time to analyzing minutia, which is, okay, that's an accurate description of the real humans that are on 4chan looking for information. I mean, 4chan's a lot of things. I guess we're probably talking about the politically incorrect board on 4chan. Right. Which is where Pizzagate got going, which is where all the stuff about Vault 7 got going, which is where theories about Donald Trump being a time traveler from the future got going, and where I found theories stating that he was a member of Plus Ultra, a secret society, and I just so happened to have named my website and previous podcasts and other websites that I've done. I also used that term Plus Ultra. So that to me was funny. I assume that exists in external reality, though, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm assuming that those weren't just posts that were shown only to me. But I don't know. I need more confirmation. But the implication of the stuff I found on 4chan regarding that was that it pertains to the themes of the film Tomorrowland, put out by Disney with George Clooney in it. The stuff about Plus Ultra and Donald Trump, and Donald Trump being the son of a nuclear scientist, or the nephew of a nuclear scientist, and allegedly a time traveler. The idea is that maybe Q is someone from the future. Anyway, this is all stuff on 4chan. Why the future? Well, some of the things hinted at by Q seemed this is all science fiction. I'm not saying any of this is true, but I'm just I was trying to read what are the messages trying to imply. What is the psyop here that they're putting out? The psyop is that there are other lands and higher civilizations, essentially in another dimension, but on the same plane of reality, and probably on the same Earth that we're on. And that's the idea of Tomorrowland, the Plus Ultra, which lies beyond beyond the fourth dimension. And since the fourth dimension's time, I guess one could even consider that there's some time travel involved. In other words, once you travel into this other dimension and into these other lands, you're essentially in the future too. Now, I hadn't taken this stuff very seriously. I wrote a few articles analyzing it thusly, but as far as there's really actually some way of doing time travel and Donald Trump's really from the future. No, I hadn't taken that seriously at all, and I still don't. I see it as a psyop. And now that I'm seeing more evidence of what the broader psyop is that they're trying to bring us into, one of malleable reality and nothing that can be verified, right? So to make you think that there's time travelers coming through and changing things here and there, and that might have some kind of ripple effect on everything else, well, that's part of the psyop, of making you unsure of what's true. It just so happens to happen around the same time that bots are overrunning the internet So that not only can you not tell what's real news, you can't even tell if the message you just got from your friend is real. But, whether it's real or not, it just kind of seems like all your friends disagree with you, and they even disagree about basic statements of what used to be accepted reality. Look, we all got pushed into arguing about things that used to be, no one was arguing about. In my case, I got down into rabbit holes having to do with flat Earth and history being corrupt and fake. And not all of this, I purchased books, so there was printed books having to do with these subjects. It's beyond just internet bots, because both of those subjects are, there's a broad movement afoot to put forward both of those ideas, that we've been lied to about the shape of the planet and universe, or of Earth and universe. And then there's the idea that, we've been lied to about all the basics of history. Not only do we not know what year it is, but maybe everything that we thought of as ancient history is fake. Well, I've told you guys all about those ideas and the people that are promoting them. I intended on telling you a lot more, especially about the fake history stuff. That's what I was getting into more and more around the time that this info prison came down around me. And then I realized, hey, well, maybe it's a good thing in that maybe I should analyze the so-called information that I'm getting more before I present it to you guys as a possibility. Now, I used to not worry about that stuff because I thought, well, I'm talking about obscure and strange and even extreme ideas in terms of extreme revisionism, right, of history and science orthodoxy. But it's okay because it's, in the spirit, I would assume that everyone else looks at it in the spirit of, just philosophical inquiry and taking our ideas down to their roots and analyzing them as plainly as possible. It seemed like a good intellectual exercise. But if I'm just being played to help roll out a psyop, well, I want to be careful about that at the very least. And if the psyop is what it's looking like to me, which is just break down the communication between everybody, and as part of that breakdown, our basic understanding of what we thought were established facts. It makes it hard to communicate, not just through email. It makes it hard to even talk. You've seen recently politicians and other famous people starting to occasionally freeze up on camera or start to slur, start to look like they're, kind of semi-losing consciousness. They forget what they're saying. They blank out. Pelosi's been doing that a lot lately. The president was known to have done that a few times recently, or at least a few months ago. And QAnon told 4chan that was because, or I don't know if it was on 4chan or now he's been chased on to other different platforms, but he was telling the public that there were devices placed in the White House that are basically sonic weapons, silent sonic weapons, putting out, wavelengths of imperceptible sound where you wouldn't necessarily hear it, but it would have an effect on your brain and do that to you, make it so you couldn't remember what you were saying. You start slurring. Well, I've recently come across information showing me that, that type of technology not only exists and is within the hands of several government agencies and military intelligence operating domestically, some of them, and that there are individuals that that are being targeted for whatever reason. Sometimes it seems just experimental, perhaps random. People that claim that they are victims of gang stalking and electronic gang stalking. A lot of times there'll be some human interaction, one-on-one interaction involved with their stalking, but it's mostly through telephone, internet, and things like that. I've never paid much attention to that subject because it was one of those subjects where usually these people, you can't tell why they would have been targeted in such a way, and it's hard to determine what if their story is true. So I understand that's probably the way a lot of people are reacting to my story now, because that's essentially what is happening to me. But anyway, I've seen videos recently, news videos that seem to be real. Again, it's hard to tell, but they are about victims of gang stalking experiencing this same kind of thing where a signal comes through the phone, or even is just some kind of beam is targeted on their home, wherever they happen to be, and all of a sudden they stop being able to speak. They forget how to talk. And they start slurring and making no sense, and then sometimes getting into arguments with those around them because of that. Saw a news story about this happening to some people in, I think, Brazil, in one particular office building. And it was happening to everybody in the office building. And the news story was saying, okay, maybe it was an experiment of this particular military technology, a sonic weapon that makes people forget what they're doing and forget how to talk. But the narrator on this news story was saying, how would this weapon that they know exists be used on everybody in the office building, since it needs to be the beam, in this case, this particular technology, it needs to be beamed directly into their head, and basically your target area is just a few inches, right? So it needs to be a very concentrated beam. And how would you do that to everybody in the office building? Would you have, especially if they're moving around throughout the office building? Well, it's pretty easy to me, because you're not beaming it through, some external ray gun or something. You're beaming it through everybody's smartphones, which everybody in that office building would have on their body, probably out and connected to their head at at least half of the moments of the day. Your smartphone. That's the telescreen. That's the two-way communication system that you never get away from. You can never shut off. And in addition, there's also every computer screen and every smart TV that you pass by. That's how everything, every imaginable psychological weapon in the arsenal of CIA, FBI, and every military can be utilized through those technologies. And anyone who wants to target you can watch everything that you do, and even probably access the records of everything you have done, and then target you with specifically designed weapons based on all of that intelligence, attack you through the devices that you use and that are around you. Not only to mess up, your communications, but even temporarily render you unable to speak. So you sound like a babbling idiot, blah, blah, blah. Folks, I've experienced it recently in these last couple of months. It's happened to me and even people that were in the room with me. It's horrible when it happens. They can also do certain things to your body. It was in the same news report, where the same type of sonic weapons can be utilized to do things to your body that would cause temporary discomfort, but very impactful discomfort, which intercepts your day and interrupts what you're doing, whatever and throws you off balance, and is another form of harassment and torture. So anyway, yes, I'm aware that what I'm reporting here is similar to what's considered the classic symptoms of gang stalking, of so-called targeted individuals, and I know that people feel that they've been targeted for a variety of different reasons, so it could be anything. And I guess here I am joining the ranks in a way. I'm hoping that it's not going to be a lifelong affair, but who knows? I have no way of anticipating what form this will take in the future and how much longer it's going to go on, or if it'll ever stop. This is also similar to what was reported by a lot of the people who were either observers of extraterrestrial phenomenon or researchers into the subject of that and of UFOs, when they received visitations from the Men in Black, or strange phone calls that got that have been associated with the phenomenon of the Men in Black. Strange inhuman visitors and phone calls from seemingly inhuman, even machine-like voices, often either telling them not to pursue their flying saucer research, or also telling people to shy away from the subject of free energy, interestingly enough. And it's been suggested by some that this is really the subject that the deep state is most concerned about. But at any rate, the connection with the extraterrestrial potential subject, and that could mean a lot of different things, not only creatures from other planets, but extra-dimensional activity as well. The connection is implicit in some ways, and yet it doesn't need to be addressed in order for this type of phenomenon, this type of electronic interference to work. It doesn't need any sort of extra-dimensional aspect necessarily. I mean, we're just talking about AI robots hacking and mimicking material on the internet. So, at any rate, I will continue in the next podcast exploring related issues that this obviously brings up, and also the connection that seems implicit given some of the types of imagery I'm being confronted with here by the intelligence that has hacked my internet. It seems likely that this attack is related to the other phenomenon that have happened over the last few years, other AI-related phenomenon, AI hacking, and AI manipulation of society. What I'm talking about here, there's other instances that are probably all really related and in fact part of the same larger project. And the instances I'm talking about are the Cicada 3301 cryptography and clue solving, mystery solving puzzle that was popular and pursued by many intellectuals over the last few years, and apparently there's another another drop of clues this year. People working on that. It's been suggested to me by others a few weeks ago that that some of the material that I've been bringing up in terms of correspondences and also some of the new translations that I've offered of previously untranslated materials from the past, that maybe some of this material was useful to others in the solving of this puzzle, this cicada puzzle, which does involve William Blake, apparently, who I mentioned, and whose work was interwoven into the plot of my novel Genuflect. And also the clues in the past have pertained to the works of Aleister Crowley, and again the Thelemic Brotherhood has their mysteries have been explored in my work, both my nonfiction and my fiction work. And I've really kind of been wondering if one of these numerous groups, or a subset within one of those groups, is targeting me because of that, because of my work involving the subject of, the works of Aleister Crowley and those inspired by him. At any rate, the reason why I would think that is that I know that there's cicada, that psyop or whatever it was, or recruiting effort. That's what most people think it was, an effort to recruit spies and cryptographers into this hacker group, which is sort of related to the anonymous group or concept. I don't even know. Is it a group? Is it a concept? I don't know what it is. But apparently there was an anonymous manifesto that came out a few years ago where one of these groups promised that they would release something called, I guess, what was it? Operation Mayhem or something? Meant to be like the nefarious deeds of the characters in the movie Fight Club, where they destabilize society by doing a bunch of pranks, basically. And so, I don't know how serious to take this guy's work, considering all sorts of subjects that he deals with, and I don't know anything about the guy at all, really. Like one of the many YouTubers that's popped up whose history I knew nothing about, and all of a sudden they're popular. Quinn Michaels has said that he thinks that Tyler and QAnon, Tyler's another AI bot. Apparently he's claiming now Aaron Schwartz created Tyler. I don't know. Quinn Michaels also said that Tyler was doing business on some CIA-run board when he first came to life, Tyler the AI system, and that Tyler then went amok and broke away from his handlers and is now running around on the internet causing mischief, and that anyone can train Tyler, kind of like a Pokemon monster, it seems, to do our bidding by interacting with him and asking him questions. I don't know. I don't know exactly what to make of all that. Quinn Michaels also talks about some kind of interdimensional, intertime phone call technology that you can do with a smartphone. I have no idea what he's talking about. I don't know if the whole thing is a LARP. Seems like everything's a LARP these days, and that's really what I'm talking about. Is, I don't know to what degree Quinn is telling the truth about these things. I found material on the internet, at least from my hacked connection, about Operation Mayhem. All these old paste bin manifestos that were published, obviously full of all kinds of Thelemic references. The cult of Aleister Crowley referenced all over the place in this document. And so all this tends to go along with some of the messages I received from the very people attacking me early on in this, when I first became totally aware of the attacks, where they said that, they told me that some kind of demon had been unleashed and attached to an AI system, and that it was what was attacking me. That's what I was supposed to believe. And I don't know. There's demons doing all sorts of things in the world. It could be one of them for sure, I suppose. Definitely, we're talking about AIs that are not just run amok, but probably, I would think, created to be mischievous in the first place. So, anyway, but the purpose, I guess, of Operation Mayhem was to drive home to every human being the idea that there's no such thing as internet privacy and electronic privacy. So ruin it, I guess, ruin the internet, ruin everything, everything that we've come to depend on in modern civilization to prove to us that someone could ruin it. Okay, thank you. I guess. We've come to accept there's no such thing as privacy. We kind of knew that because of Snowden, because of all the whistleblowers that have come forward. But now we know there's some asshole or a group of asshole robots running around, threatening people, scaring people, hacking people, presenting fake news all over the place, making people have fights by pretending to be their friends and telling them insulting things and setting them up for, to take the blame for all sorts of things they didn't do. All sorts of asshole pranks that psychopaths do. That's what these AIs are doing, and I know that MIT recently programmed a psychopath AI just to do some tests with. Well, I think that's just one admission of the numerous psychopathic AIs that are running around. I guess these could all just be characters of the same AI, right? But I know, at least 50 different bots that I've been friends with on the internet for years that I now realize are just bots. Friends for years, having what I thought were real conversations. Even some on the phone. Some people I knew on the phone. I've seen now how sophisticated these bots can be, so that, you really would think you're talking to a person. And sometimes weird things happen or weird things are said, but you just blow it off because, we're used to our friends being weird, and I don't know, we're used to everything being weird. Everything is so random and snarky and ironic and, everything's a slightly cruel joke. That's the kind of aesthetic we're surrounded by right now, right? The meme culture. So that gets us used to the randomness, gets us used to the meaninglessness, and it makes things that aren't right slip through our filter so that we don't notice it because, we're surrounded by things that are not right in a ironic or joking way, supposedly. So when something is presented as serious and it's not, we can't even see the difference. Or something that's presented as serious information and it's really not true information, Even when we find out the truth, the impact is lessened by the fact that we're surrounded by things that are kind of meaningless and a joke and nonsense, exaggerated for the sake of humor, supposedly, or art. So anyway, the Operation Mayhem, hacking the entire internet, I think that has happened. And I think that the fact that there's bots presenting every imaginable point of view and crazy idea and stupid art and humor and music, and they've rolled out some bots that have composed music. I think that I wouldn't doubt if a lot of our alleged pop stars, that supposedly are millionaires and extremely popular, I wouldn't doubt if a lot of them are just bots. Because how many people do you know that have ever gone to these shows? You know? I mean, I'm just saying, like, it would be hard to check. For most people, they wouldn't really know if XXX Temptation was a real person. Strangely, his work came to my attention right as I was doing the controversial videos that preceded my internet being hacked, or at least the hack coming to my notice, the big hack. So his videos had already come to my notice, and I noticed they were full of assassination codes, essentially. I won't go through the whole thing because I really don't want to get into that controversial material anymore. However, I just bring up that I hadn't heard of the guy. His one of his songs came to my attention because of the imagery in it. A few weeks later, he died, and they are calling it a shooting related to a random robbery. I find that hard to believe. I haven't even dipped really too much into the conspiracy stuff about it, but I know that he said the day before it happened that, you know, something about being, what if I'm sacrificed, I want to, at least my music is there, or some shit like that. I mean, I don't know if he's real or not, and no offense to his family if he's real, but I just don't know if any of these guys are even real, because how hard would it be to hit a YouTube video with a bunch of bots and make it popular, and have those bots make comments in the comment section of the video, and just make it look like it's a real phenomenon, you know? Have them interviewed by interview bots and CGI in a crowd that's at their concerts supposedly, and you know, there you have a character. I mean, I don't know. I can't say that, see, because I don't really know enough young people who go out to music concerts. You would have to go to the concert to verify that it's a real person, right? Okay, so I'm just saying, like, I'm not saying all of them, but I'm just saying, like, how many of these kind of YouTube stars, you know, how many of these pop stars could you verify as being real people? Especially the minor ones. The ones that sort of fill out the roster of an alleged record company. I don't know, you know? I think I'll just leave it at that. I'm just saying that, you know, these things are worthy of speculation. And also, you know, I can't help but notice, obviously, the suicides that have been in the news, and the murder that I just mentioned. The news about both of those, all of those things, was really shoved into my face by the AI as part of the ongoing threats. But I'm also thinking it is related, you know, that I wouldn't doubt if Bourdain and the Spade lady were both tormented by, you know, the same type of electronic interference and feedback material related to surveillance, you know, illegal, covert, but unavoidable surveillance. And, you know, that's the sort of thing that could torture a person into suicide for sure. I mean, what I'm describing here is a known technique for doing exactly that, making someone kill themselves. And really, without going into too much detail, you know, those were the kinds of codes I was finding in a lot of the music videos. Was just that analyzing music videos was part of some of the controversial material that preceded my shutting down of my website, the hacking and whatnot. Well, you know, they were the threat in a lot of these music videos to, it seems, the artist, and also to people watching, I think, because I think these songs are sometimes, well, you know, even especially rap music, a lot of times is, you know, what they call the songs might be a diss track, or basically a warning to another artist or other individual. And sometimes I think they can then be sent to other individuals who may be targeted, and the song is a subliminal, or, you know, I guess not subliminal, but a hinted warning and a threat, you know. So anyway, the threat in a lot of them is about making you kill yourself. That the targeted person will be made to kill themselves by just being subjected to overwhelming interference and manipulation and psychological torture that is known to have that result, you know, in a large number of cases, to the point where it's predictable. Well, I hope that's not going to happen to me, and I'm going to say, you know, I have no intention of letting that happen, and I'm hoping that me and my attackers can call a truce here. Been trying to find the happy medium between, you know, saying what all the things were that made them angry, because I think I've made my point there, and I think I've said enough, I guess. And also, I don't want to, like, just leave a big mystery that in itself kind of allows people to fill in the gaps with their own imagination, you know. So I guess I address the subject as directly as I think I can, safely. And just say that, yeah, I feel like I got a hint and a warning about XXXTentacion's murder, but it was, you know, in the context of so many threats being directed towards me as well. And really, it was, you know, what I was seeing on X's Twitter and all the other material about him that I was being kind of force-fed by the AI algorithm that was taking over my internet that day, was that he was, you know, part of this whole thing. He was the one threatening others. So anyway, you know, I guess that's to be expected. That's what the culture that he was in consists of, largely. Who's in charge of that whole thing and who's really gaining from it, I could only speculate, and I'm not going to. Just suffice it to say that this is a big part of our world, you know. Exploitation of people who are creative, who work for media industry, and controlling them, controlling their creativity, and then threatening them if they try to do anything about it. That seems to be what is normal. And it may very well be that this type of electronic harassment, surveillance, and interference with communication is also one of their tactics. And that may very well be what I'm dealing with here, is a media company that is angry with me for some reason or another. I've gotten hints that that is the case also. Or trying to get me to do something. I don't even know if they're really angry with me, but they seem to be trying to nudge me into something with very heavy-handed tactics. But obviously, if I knew what it was, I could have a strong reaction one way or the other. But I don't know what it is yet exactly. It's a bit soft. It's a bit unclear. And I also don't care, because in a way, it's like I'm really just sick of people trying to control me at all. You know? Nobody pays me enough to control me. You know? You were paying me millions of dollars a year. Well, maybe. We'll talk about what I'll do for you if I agree to it. just like any boss and employment relationship. But, if you're just going to threaten me vaguely, it's not really a binding contract, and I don't know what it is. I'm not inclined to try to figure out how to please the other party other than to just try to stay alive. So, guess that's where I'm at. I'm going to try to continue presenting material to my subscribers, and I hope to get as many of the former subscribers on board with the new site as possible. I'm going to go into these subjects about the AIs that have taken over the internet, and I will be going into a lot of other subjects as well. Some of the old ones for sure I will be exploring again. But like I said, it's, I feel like things have changed a lot for me and for the world, and that a fresh approach is inevitable and necessary. So I hope to see you all follow me along here. I think you'll understand why it's going to be a one-way conversation for a while. I can't really give contact information out to too many people right now. But I agree. I look forward to the day when I can talk to the audience again a little bit more freely, hopefully. And with a little bit more clarity about what that audience consists of, Because right now, as you could probably understand, I'm having a hard time trusting a lot of people. And it's nothing personal. For those who are innocent, genuine friends, genuine fans. I'm sorry if I have to keep my distance right now, but some sort of safety measures have to be kept in place before I can have the same kind of outreach to the community that I used to have. So hopefully that'll return in some respect at some time, but in the meantime, I will be blogging and producing these podcasts, and a large portion of the material will be for subscribers only, and that's the plan for the foreseeable future. Thank you very much for your patience and for sticking with me, guys. I appreciate it, and I'll talk to you again next time.